So therefore, putting Glass Steagall in its initial form, in its formal form, not with adjustments of this and that, but just straight Glass Steagall, based on the Franklin Roosevelt policy, that is what is needed, and that is the only thing that will save the American people now. Now, this has a complementary feature to it. The unpopularity of President Obama. In the recent week, and especially the recent days, Obama has fallen at a precipitous rate. He's ready to be virtually thrown out of office at some early time, a fairly immediate time. Now that means that we are closer to Glass Steagall than most people have ever thought we would become in recent years.
In this week's LPAC in Action, we endeavor to highlight Lyndon LaRouche's November 15th live webcast and the political context of which the presentation was made. A context that spells perhaps the end of the Obama tyranny over the Democratic Party, the country, and the world. A context that has come to intersect Lyndon LaRouche's urgent call made originally in the spring of 2010 to save the nation, bankrupt Wall Street, reinstate the Glass Steagall Act. To begin, Lyndon LaRouche's webcast of November 15th served to present the case with facts that under Obama's term in office, his policies have worked to make lives miserable. Increasingly under his watch, Americans' right to earn a living, to support a family, and to have confidence in themselves and the future has been stripped, all the while providing lavish support for the institutions responsible for robbing the American population of the right to a respectable life. In one of the graphs, the reality of youth unemployment was detailed, showing that in 2008, the year of Obama's first presidential success, there were only 3 states in the Union, California, Michigan, and Rhode Island, with about 30% youth unemployment. Come now to 2013, and guess what you will find. 14 states with youth unemployment of between 30 to 35%, joined with 10 states at 30 to 40%, and 5 reaching 40% youth unemployment. In total, 29 states fall short of providing a pathway for survival for a good portion of their young adult population. Is this acceptable?
Now, on this next slide, what we see is that starting in 2008, with the growth of QE, that top black line that you see there, cumulatively, we've reached a point where, because of the so-called asset purchasing program of the Federal Reserve, there has been almost $4 trillion in fictitious money that has been pushed into the United States economy. Now, what you see in conjunction with that is that bank deposits, indeed, have skyrocketed in parallel to the quantitative easing spending. However, those bank deposits have been in no way reflected into the real economy. There's been no growth in activity in the real economy during the quantitative easing regime during the first 5 years of the Obama administrations. And instead, what you've seen is that bank lending into the real economy has crashed. It crashed beginning in 2008, bottoming out in 2010, and has remained at that level ever since.
And you just think about the ways in which politicians in general will try to brush that off.
Yeah.
And when they brush it off, then they go up triumphant and say, we brushed it off, it doesn't exist anymore. So you have to pin them down hard beforehand. It's like getting a conviction in a court. So you have to prepare the evidence and then introduce the conclusion. And you want to get a conviction. You wish to secure a conviction of Barack Obama. That's the intention of that whole process. To present the case for the conviction of Barack Obama. and you want to identify it publicly, identify it by that. This is evidence for the conviction, a case for the conviction of Barack Obama for crimes against humanity, not only in the United States, but in various parts of the world. And that's the only thing that will work. Any other thing, soft touch, so forth, will not work. You've got to take the members of Congress, who are generally cowards in this matter, you've got to pin them against the wall on this one. Leave them no escape. This is a crime. Do you admit it's a crime, or are you also a criminal?
There are things we can do right now that will make a difference. And that's why I sent to Congress the American Jobs Act. It's a jobs bill. I think most Americans understand that. Recent polls showed that.
How many recall interviews, Rose Garden speeches, and press conferences by the president or through his staff, hearing the words of economic success and the recession is over? How many of you recall hearing that the worst of the economic crash has been overcome by the administration's stimulus package and historic Wall Street reform? We heard the words, but facts prove they were words without flavor, stale of the worst kind. More of the facts presented in LaRouche's webcast show the gross hyperinflation of food commodities, the decrease in the consumption of meat due to unaffordability, and collapse of meaningful work. Viewers are urged to watch the original November 15th webcast on LaRouchePAC.com to witness the full documentation joined by directives by Mr. LaRouche about how all the facts presented about the state of the country can be transformed into a different set of facts with a reenactment of Glass Steagall and all that would come into form because of it. This calls for solidarity, as emphasized earlier in the week, and the time is now. As indicated, the political context is not in Obama's favor, meaning that the imperial financial forces that he serves are weakened. In this week alone, the president's tyrannical hammer was cracked by his own failures in the Obamacare policy, which has caused Democrats to break. The now infamous, if you like your plan, you can keep it.
There's a number of developments in the situation today, most especially around this breaking situation around Obama, the fractures and the cracks in the control and in the fear. Now, one example of this is the bill from the Michigan Republican Representative Upton, passed today, 261 to 157. Now, particularly notable is that 39 Democrats voted for the Upton bill, against, obviously, the wishes of Obama. More than usual break, obviously, from Obama. Now, there were 3 Democrats who co-sponsored this. The bill allows the insurance companies to offer to policyholders to keep their plans as they are, and they can make the same policy available to others. Now, clearly, many of the Republicans who voted for this were saying that they oppose Obamacare completely, and this is meant to be a foot in the door. A number of Democrats said, of course, they support Obamacare, but people were misled. They were told they could keep their policies, and we stand by that. So a very interesting reflection, again, of the degree to which Obama is losing control of the situation. In fact, one of Obama's stronger supporters, McDermott, who actually voted against the Upton bill, said, "I haven't seen such panic in the House of Representatives since 9/11.
President Bill Clinton's remarks are the most notable, commenting at the very outset to the noble promise made incessantly by the president during the healthcare campaign, quote, "I personally believe, even if it takes a change to the law, the president should honor the commitment the federal government made to those people and let them keep what they got.
Adam Smith, who's been largely a big Obama supporter, is on the House Armed Services Committee. He spoke before the Council on Foreign Relations yesterday. He attacked Obama and the national security staff of the White House. He said they make policy without talking to Congress. They simply tell us what they've done, and then we have to support it. He compared it unfavorably to George W. He said, at least then, they kept us in the loop on Iraq every step of the way. Not so with the Obama administration. We have no say. I guess I get it. They just don't trust us.
To take place under Bush because of the fear of terrorism and the 9/11 situation. And so we have the Patriot Act and we have all these other things that set the stage for this type of abusive surveillance to take place. And now we've moved into the Obama era where those things have been not just continued with the Bush administration, but has actually been exacerbated and added to. And one of the things that we need to kind of understand is that we should have impeached Bush when he was doing the nonsense. And now we're at the stage where this president that we're with now actually is complicit with it. Instead of validating what Snowden accomplished, he chose to treat him as a criminal. And so therefore, we have a situation where he is fully aware, he's complicit, and he knows about these witch hunting intents. So intent is the issue. And I think it's time that we seriously look at the impeachment of Obama. Just like the impeachment of George Bush. Thank you.
Last word on what do each of you think about whether there are grounds to do as our participant and questioner has suggested. Comments. I'm going to give Glenn Greenwald, who's been so patiently with us late at night, the last word.
So I, of course, agree with the premise of the questioner that the Obama administration has been most notable for extending the very policies of President Bush that President Obama so vehemently railed against when trying to get into that office, and not just extending them but worsening them. On the question of legal sanctions like impeachment and the like, we watched pervasive illegality in the Bush administration go completely unpunished, in large part because this successor administration embraced this idea that, at least for the most powerful among us, we should only look forward and not backwards, and therefore prosecution was not appropriate. But if you look at what happened in the NSA case, to me the most amazing part of this entire episode is that one of the things that these early stories reveal is that the top national security officials in President Obama's administration, James Clapper, the Director of National Intelligence, General Keith Alexander, the head of the NSA, systematically deceived the FISA court, as they said in 2011, and then lied outright to the face of the Congress in 2012 when James Clapper vehemently denied that the NSA was doing exactly that which our reporting demonstrated it was. Lying to Congress is every bit as much of a felony as anything that Edward Snowden is alleged to have done, yet not only has James Clapper not been indicted the way Snowden has, he has kept his job. He hasn't even been fired. We know that lied to Congress, and yet all these brave journalists and other commentators and liberal pundits love to go around saying Edward Snowden should be put into jail, and yet never say that, and would never say it about James Clapper. And this is really the heart of the problem, is for so long, all of these top officials in Washington have been able to do everything that they want to do in total secrecy, with no transparency, with no accountability. And I think that on the optimism-pessimism question, what will ultimately determine that is whether we change that dynamic, whether we finally bring transparency and accountability to these officials who wield the greatest power, because right now they have none. And that, more than anything else, has been our objective in doing the reporting that we've been doing.
The president has become the plague in politics. He is the modern leprosy of the medieval days. How then are we to cure ourselves from this unwanting disease? Glass Steagall, a proposal LaRouche motions for with tenacity, and one which regained its momentum lost by the orchestrated government shutdown. Speaking to an audience at the Roosevelt Institute's Financial Reform Conference, Senator Warren gave an address which, in effect, challenged the old-tale argument of the Obama stronghold, "No Glass-Steagall, let Dodd-Frank work out." She stated, "It has been 3 years since Dodd-Frank was passed. The biggest banks are bigger than ever. The risk to the system has grown, and the market distortions have continued. For that reason, I partnered with Senators John McCain, Maria Cantwell, and Angus King to offer up one potential way to address the too-big-to-fail problem, the 21st Century Glass Steagall Act. The 21st Century Glass Steagall Act would reinstate many of the protections found in the original Glass Steagall Act. It would wall off depository institutions from riskier activities like investment banking, swaps dealing, and private equity activities. In other words, the new Glass Steagall Act would attack too big and too fail. It would reduce failures of the big banks by making banking boring, protecting deposits, and providing stability to the system even in bad times. And it would reduce too big by dismantling the behemoths, so that big banks would be big, but not too big to fail, or, for that matter, too big to manage, too big to regulate, too big for trial, or too big for jail.
The former Republican governor of North Dakota, his name is Ed Schaefer, who was also the Secretary of Agriculture from 2008 to 2009 at the end of the G.W. Bush presidency, has a commentary strongly supporting Glass Steagall, praising the retired senator from North Dakota, Byron Dorgan, who not only supports Glass Steagall but voted against the repeal of Glass Steagall back in 1999 and has been an opponent of the whole thrust of deregulation. What Schaefer notes is the fact that one of the Republican members of the House of Representatives, Representative Kevin Cramer from North Dakota, has been thinking about and made clear that he's been thinking about becoming a co-sponsor of Glass Steagall, and the former governor makes it clear that he agrees that this is what should be done. He says at one point, we should not allow the connection between banks and investment companies. It places too much risk on the taxpayers, and the big institutions make tons of dough working the system instead of profit from the creation of goods and services in our economy. The solution is to reinstate Glass Steagall and separate investment houses and banks. Private sector banks can decide whether or not to lend money for big-time financial gambles. Then banks can assign interest rates according to the risk and lend the money or not. So basically, this is a strong endorsement.
But now we have to do as Franklin Roosevelt did in his time, to follow up the enactment of Glass Steagall with a federal support for recovery. In other words, we need to have a stop the bleeding, but we also have to have a recovery program, like Franklin Roosevelt's recovery program, which means we're going to have to create a capital fund of national banking, not this crazy stuff we're doing now in Wall Street, but we're going to have to, federal credit will be used under discretion to fund employment and related programs, education programs included, in order to rebuild the economy of the United States for the benefit of the people of the United States. There is now no means to organize a real recovery of that type. Once Glass Steagall is done, then we can use the federal law to establish provisions of a credit system and the type of rescue programs that Franklin Roosevelt did during the 1930s and beyond, which enabled us to meet the challenge of World War II. So that's where we stand, and that's the way you have to look at this thing. So this idea of going, you have to have two steps. You can't do the credit